I'd like to call the Township of North Huntington Board of Commissioners special meeting for Thursday, May 9th, 2019, 7 p.m. Roll call, Manager Silka.
Commissioner Harold. Commissioner Bertani.
Here.
Commissioner Blasco.
Here.
Commissioner Martino.
Here.
Commissioner Bevan.
Here.
Commissioner Casera.
Here.
Commissioner Haggis.
Here. Could everyone please stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If any residents would like to speak tonight, they could sign a book at the podium. All right, let the record reflect no citizens' input for tonight. Yeah, if you want to talk tonight, Dan, just if you want, just state your name and address for the record. You can go ahead and go.
Okay, Jeffrey Bogdan, 1866 Sandy Hill Road, North Huntington.
You can, sir, you can speak now.
Okay. I was wanted to speak in regards to the cell phone tower being put on the Manor Borough property down there. My wife showed me the article on April the 5th that there was a cell tower going in down there. So I made an appointment to see Tom McGuire the next day, and he says, well, we made a lot of variances to the property line down there. I told him, well, I own the property beside that Manor Borough property. And they said, well, don't worry about it. There's going to be the planning commission didn't approve everything, so there's going to be a meeting next month for the planning commission. So I went to the planning commission meeting, and there's a good conversation back and forth about the pros and cons of the tower, which I'm not really opposed to the tower at all. But I was just concerned about the impact on my property. And then I went to the township zoning meeting the night after that, which was yesterday. And they said, well, it's just too late. You should have been there at the meeting on March 2nd. I didn't see it in the paper till the next day. And a lot of these things impacted my property. The tower is twice as high, twice as close to my property, twice as close to any other cell towers in the area. And I was told that, well, it was my unfortune that, I was not at that meeting and there was nothing else I could do about it. And I just, wanted some consideration that, this is impacting my property. I'm getting all the negative benefits from it. I'm getting all the bad stuff that comes with a cell phone tower and not getting any kind of consideration for, giving up things on my property. And I just wanted to see, is this it? Can I do anything else? I didn't know anything about it. The meeting, surely would have been there. I've been here 3 nights this week already. It would have been not a problem at all to come to that meeting on March the 2nd, but found out later they stuck a thing on the phone pole down there, and that was the notification process. So that's kind of what I wanted to, find out, that, like I say, I'm not opposed to the cell tower going in. I've just wanted some consideration for what I'm giving up, on my property. I think it would be only fair, So that's pretty much all I wanted to say at this point.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, with no other citizens' input tonight, response to citizens' input?
Andy, would you mind chiming in when sharing some of the details you'd share with me, with Mr. Bogdan?
This situation is remarkably similar to the cell phone tower that went in or was proposed, hasn't been built yet, on the Kerber property adjacent to Kerber Farm Estates. Verizon, same tower company, 195 feet, same height. The difference was on the Kerber property, the tower was in an R2 zoning district, and it was the height of the tower back from the property lines. The tower that's proposed now on Oakside is in an R4 district, where a tower is permitted as a conditional use. The same standards would apply as in any other district, that being that the tower has to be set back from the property line a distance equal to its height. So at 195 feet, it should be 195 feet from the property line. It also is required to be 2 miles from the nearest cell phone tower. I can't speak for cell phone towers outside of North Huntington. I don't know what's in Penn Township or Manor. I'm not sure that would reach Murraysville, but there is a cell phone tower that Sprint erected at the Turnpike interchange probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and this is about 1.5 miles from that. So because those are provisions of the zoning ordinance, only the zoning hearing board can waive those or issue variances from those. In fact, they did allow a variance to place the tower 105 feet from the property line and 1.5 miles from the tower that exists at the Turnpike interchange. So I don't want to pass judgment on whether that was right or wrong or good or bad or legal or illegal, but that's what they did. They heard the case in April. Their decision isn't a decision until it's in writing and signed. So that was done Tuesday night. So the township, should they wish to appeal that decision, has 30 days to do so from Tuesday night, May 7th. So the clock is ticking on that. The Planning Commission Monday night really was left with very few issues to review. Is there a gravel access road? Is there an 8-foot fence around the equipment cabinet? Is there evergreen screening around the enclosure? And are there easements there for the utilities to get it to the tower? All of which there were. So it wasn't a unanimous decision from the Planning Commission. There were some concerns about its proximity to the floodplain. They were concerned about its setback from the property line. There was, as Mr. Bodnar indicated, there was quite a discussion. But ultimately, there was a vote, and the majority felt they had no option but to recommend approval. Now, from this point going forward, because this is a conditional use, there has to be a public conditional use hearing. We knew coming out of Monday night's meeting that there wouldn't be enough time to advertise that hearing for this evening. So that hearing will be scheduled for Thursday, June 13th. And there will be a court reporter here. Anybody who would like to testify should come and get their name on the record and state what their concerns are. But honestly, I don't know that, like the one on the Kerber property, that there's a whole lot that at this point, it seems to me the major issues have already been granted by the zoning hearing board. What's left is in compliance with the ordinance. So this is on the agenda tonight purely because it was on the Planning Commission meeting Monday, but no vote would be taken next week. This would be delayed until next month after the conditional use hearing.
But like you said, Andy, we would have 30 days from the 2nd to appeal if we would be interested in appealing.
From the
their
7th.
decision. From the 7th, excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the 7th.
Correct.
Okay, Andy, you said it was 105 feet from the
100
property line instead
Correct.
of
Instead of 195 feet.
195? Okay, I don't understand why they would grant that. If it falls down, it's gonna come down on this gentleman's property.
Nor do I.
That's the one main concern I had, the 2 mile from the nearest cell phone tower. That part, I want to say I could care less, but it's not that much of an issue, but from the property line being close to.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, my other concern is, here we go again with the notifying people in the general vicinity, just putting a notice up on a telephone pole. I mean, I know they probably had it in the paper, but I don't know how many people actually read the paper nowadays.
Probably not.
I think there's something we gotta look into having them changed as far as that's concerned too. There's no reason some type of mailing couldn't be put out to these people that
It
live
could.
in close proximity.
I'll say what I said before, and I was at both of the hearings at the Planning Commission and the Zoning Board this week. And I'll say what I said before, if Verizon was a good neighbor, they would have at least have contacted the people in the surrounding area about what their intentions were, instead of the people having to learn it in the newspaper. I just think that that's common courtesy, being a good neighbor, and I'm also opposed to it because they ignored the policies that we already have in place about the height.
All right, so at this point, would we have to take a vote to appeal it, or?
Well, what I would suggest, this is a legal matter that we can entertain in an executive session and come up with a strategy.
Okay.
Thank you. That's the end of citizens' response. Work session discussion topics, Mr. Silka.
Okay, I have a few that are on the agenda and a few to add tonight. The first is, from time to time, whenever the legislature is in session, there comes consideration of bills that, possibly the township would want to contact their legislative delegates to put favor or, put on, on the record an opinion. We did it with the ISO ratings where the state wasn't adopting the up-to-date building codes. So we were getting dinged on our ISO ratings, and at the end, the state came up with an adoption. They fulfilled it. So I have three tonight that from the League of Cities that they've requested. I think that are very important. The first is the support of local use of radar. This bill's been bandied about for probably the last 5 to 6 sessions, strenuously, keeps getting bogged down. Probably they've kind of moved away from the certification and the credentialing of law enforcement agencies, where they realize that no matter how good your SOPs are, no matter how good your training are, a lot of the places will not get their credentials because of the physical layout of their department. They can't meet the physical plant without basically building new buildings, especially in a building like ours, which is a little bit older and wasn't built to be a police department. So now, now they're looking, probably the biggest hump right now is people looking that it's a revenue generator. And that's the key, as smaller departments. We all know there's places, Summersville, West Virginia, as soon as you hit 5 miles there, get down below the speed limit because that is a revenue generator. But right now it's coming out strong again. The sponsor is looking for a couple more bill sponsors to get it out. I know talk to Police Chief Rizzo and some of our officers. They are, we are in favor from the police department aspect for local use of radar. It gives us that ability to combat speeding without having to sit between the white lines, so everybody knows where the traps are and where to slow down. So that is one that I'd consider, taking action to authorize a letter to our senator and representatives in favor of it for this session, as the session is coming into the full swing. Second, and this is probably I'm sorry.
Before we go there, does the board agree with Jeff? Because if you do, why don't you make a motion to authorize Jeff to write the letter?
I'm comfortable with moving forward with that.
Yeah, you said the certification for the department has been removed.
It's been walked back. It's not the major hurdle now, the credentialing of an agency.
Okay, and I think the other part they had in there was that revenue could only reach a certain percent of a budget.
Yeah, and that's probably the main sticking point. I think as they keep moving that number down of the percentage to show that this isn't a revenue generator, this is a safety. I would draft a letter for you saying that for safety, for speed control, this is why North Huntington Township is in favor.
Yeah, I've always been in favor of it. The white lines are nice as far as for enforcement, but that was a tool we had, the same as when they come out with the NRAD, which was beams going across the road. But this is something that I think we should have had a long time ago. It just make enforcement so much easier for the officers. I'll make a motion to have Jeff go forward with, what do you need to do, write a letter? Or?
Yeah, I will write a letter to our state senator,
Okay.
to Kim
draft
Ward
a
and George
letter for
Dunbar,
a
yes.
State senator, with us backing this.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Okay, the second issue that is, and this is an important one, and actually we're going to talk about it a little bit later on another item, is to oppose the zoning preemption and the placement of wireless infrastructure in right-of-ways. This is the DAS systems, the small systems. We were kind of forced up against the wall to approve an agreement for right-of-way use at last month's meeting for the small internet, and the federal government kind of ruled and took away a lot of the local control and placement of right-of-ways. And this is, basically giving these companies, which are usually third-party pole companies, they're not utilities. They don't have any services. They then lease the pole space to the DAS operators, and they have the same right-of-way as gas, electric, or cable to come in, occupy our right-of-ways with very little local control. So what we're looking at from the state level is to have state legislation drafted to put zoning back where it belongs within the locality and not at the state or federal level. And we're fighting a big lobby here. The PUC ruled in our favor, then the courts reversed it. So we're up against a time clock, and also we're on a shot clock. Whenever we get an application, we have 60 days to render a decision rather than our 90 days. So it really limits our power to regulate anything other than maybe a little bit of aesthetics and a little bit of fee. I mean, is that something you'd want to be on record, restoring the power to the locality where zoning in Pennsylvania under the Constitution belongs, under our Commonwealth?
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Okay, so the motion would be in order again then, to direct Jeff to do that.
All right, I'll make a motion again. I'll make the motion to have Jeff write up something and present it to how he needs to, our concern about this.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
And the third one, and this affected us probably mostly, it came in right before summer of last year, is the state fireworks law, Act 43 of 2017, that basically gave the state the power to regulate fireworks, took the local regulations off. And took a lot of the municipalities' power away to regulate anything with the fireworks regulations. And what we're looking here is to allow local regulations to increase fines and also to maybe outlaw and restrict fireworks in certain areas that municipalities really don't want, even though they may fit within the state law. But this was the state put that blanket law over. Sometimes maybe without thinking it through all the way. It has to be 100 feet between residents. So basically, there's no housing developments. You're going to be shooting off fireworks, however they do the sales, the regulate. So what we'd like to do is have local jurisdiction restored into the fireworks law, and allow local control.
I make a motion that we add the fireworks law to our agenda, and for Jeff to draft a letter to the state.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Thank you. The next issue, Commissioner Blasco had asked Dan and I to take a look at possibly doing something to regulate tobacco use within our parks. So, I have Dan Miller here to help me. He did, the legwork on this. The Young Lungs at Play program is a statewide program that is out there, and I did provide a memo of certain steps to take on if this would want to be regulated in the parks. Dan, you want to pick it up and kind of walk us through this?
Sure, thanks for the layup, Manager Shepard, Manager Silka. Forgive me.
It's almost been 2
Yeah,
years.
how about that? Yeah, my goodness. Forgive me.
Begin with this.
About a month ago, maybe early April, Commissioner Blasco did inquire with me if we had a program in our parks regarding a smoking policy. And at the time, and at the present time, we currently do not. But I did some research at the request of Manager Silka, finding out that there was a statewide program called Young Lungs at Play that was initiated several years ago throughout the state and local parks. The research that I came up with was I contacted the Pennsylvania Department of Health, who originated the program. They had put me in touch with the Penn State Extension of Westmoreland County, who coordinates the program. And after meeting with them, I had found out that Adagio Health Network is the health network that contracts the program. So there's 3 partners that participate in the program. Us as a township would look at the program and decide whether it is obviously something you want to move forward with. I will tell you, I've contacted some colleagues in the industry. There are some neighboring communities that have initiated the program in their parks. Some have not. I guess really if you choose with discussion, and again, Manager Silka has provided you some information. I don't want to bore you with the details. There was certainly some information passed on to you. But if you do choose to take that action, we would need an ordinance passed. Once the ordinance is passed, it would have to be accepted by the Pennsylvania Department of Health and then contracted through Adagio Health. The labor on our end really is just to post some signs and make people aware of it through publicity, and that's about the extent of it. So at this point, I think I'll put it back in
And the signs are provided through the Young Youngsters to Play program, so our cost is very minimal. And it's, to hosting a PR event and doing the labor and then the enforcement.
Yeah, Dan, I wanted to say thank you for following up on that and all the additions you've made to our parks in the recent years. I use Indian Lake on a near daily basis, and with the fitness equipment there's nothing more that I enjoy than running behind someone who's smoking a cigarette as they walk around the lake. So it's kind of an oxymoron of health benefits there. And right now, with a lot of the fishermen that have started since trout season, I don't know where the cigarette butts are going. I don't know if they're going into the lake, if they're going onto the ground. So it's another concern as well. And looking out for the younger residents. As you know, I've suffered with asthma all my life, so I think it's a great move for the township to make. I know enforcement is going to be a little bit difficult on this, but this goes just like speed limits. There's going to be people that follow it because it's posted, and sometimes a common courtesy, even, hey, would you mind putting that out, might help us out there. But I know that's going to be a tough issue to enforce, but I still think it's the right direction. And again, thank you guys for your efforts on this.
Any other board discussion?
Yeah, I have a few comments about this. I worked in healthcare for many years before I retired, and I even had a mother that had lung cancer, who was cured of it, who was not a smoker, not even secondhand smoke. So sometimes I wonder about the statistics that are thrown out there, especially the one about 38,000 annual deaths in the United States and over 1 million illnesses in children. I wonder about those statistics because I've worked with CDC, and I know some of their statistics. My mother was thrown into that group of a smoker when she was diagnosed. So that doesn't really fly with me very well. As well as Pennsylvania has no open-air smoking restrictions. Ours would supersede the state regulations. Regular smokers in the park might become disenfranchised and not use our facilities if they weren't allowed to smoke. I don't believe that people should smoke, don't get me wrong. I don't smoke, and I don't think that it's good for people to smoke. However, I also believe in personal freedom and responsibility, and I don't think that we should be telling people what they should be doing with their own health care. I think that's entirely up to them. When I worked at the hospital, at the healthcare facility, we kicked our smokers into a room by themselves, which was very bad for smokers to be in a room that more smoke was generated than if they were somewhere else. And then we kicked them outside. And that was really not very publicly a good position for a hospital to be in, to kick your smokers outside in the cold weather to smoke. I think that we should ask people politely not to smoke, and perhaps around the playground areas where the kids are more concentrated, maybe just post signs that say, please do not smoke around the playground area.
With all due respect, I believe that the freedom of that individual to smoke ends when that secondhand smoke enters the lungs of another individual, and that's where their personal freedoms of clean air is being infringed upon. So, again, at no point am I going to argue with you about the statistics. I don't believe that. Maybe every stat in here is accurate, but I don't want my nieces and nephews having to breathe this in here. I think it's a no-brainer for the township It kind of
Yes.
reminds me of a Seinfeld episode where Kramer was upset that people were not to smoke. If you want them to be able to smoke somewhere, just offer them your address and have them come to your house and
Well,
smoke
they'll be
in
on
front of
my
your
porch
house.
smoking because they won't be allowed in my house. Also, I believe, I don't know whether we actually have a smoking problem in the parks. Is there actually a smoking problem that we have to address? If there is, then we should address it. If we have people that are underage smoking in the parks, they're sneaking out, getting away from mom and dad, and have a cigarette or two. Well, I think that's something that our police department can handle. And I also believe that large-scale enforcement is counterindicated in the case of smoking.
Any other board discussion, input? And I'm okay with moving forward with this, and putting it on the agenda, and seeing, where the vote will go. I'm in favor of it. I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with it. Good.
Okay.
Okay, I'll put that on the agenda. The next item is, there's the old song, "Times They Are Changing." For North Huntington, it's, lands they are sliding. What we have is on Frog Road, we have a landslide that we can't put off, that we have to take action on because it is going to be compromising our road and it's going to turn into another Haywood if we don't address it. I do have Bob Robinson here for any direct questions, but what happened is this landslide is going to be a gabion stabilization repair. We tried to go out with getting our telephonic and our quotes. It came in just a little bit over that we could accept without going out to bids. So we went right to bids, and then the project basically doubled. But what we do is we have a low bid from Quigley Development of $48,950 to do the stabilization. This is an unbudgeted project, but what we do have some savings on the millings and resurfacing budget because we've had to take Pine Street Extension off because we have a slide developing there that we're monitoring, and we're going to reprogram some of our other costs within the Public Works to find the funds. This is a very large project, so we're basically going to be looking for about $20,000 to cover the cost after the paving. But this is something that we can't put off, and it's going to be on the agenda for next week's meeting for approval. I just wanted to give you a heads up as a board that this is why it's coming.
Any board discussion or questions?
My only question would be, does anybody, do you know Quigley? Are they responsible? Does anybody know about them?
I didn't do a detailed review, but they do have a performance bond. I did talk.
Have you heard of them before?
I have heard of the name before, but I'm not real familiar with their work. I didn't do a detailed bid review on them, but they do have a performance bond that guarantees their work, and the scope of the work is pretty
not difficult.
elementary.
Yeah.
That I don't think we'll have a problem.
Okay.
Yeah, quite frankly, if we had the time, we could probably have done this ourselves, but we just can't. With everything else going on, getting ready to catch up with the road program, we just can't commit our staff to do this and do it in one shot. So I agree with Bob. This isn't going to be an issue with the contractor. So that'll be on the agenda. My next item, and I just got these quotes on Sunday night emailed to me. One is we're coming up into the window to renew our cable TV franchise. In 2021, our cable TV franchise is up. And this is we're in a kind of an interesting era as people are unplugging more and more. So all franchise fees are kind of going down. Dan Cohen Law Group has done this in the past for us. This is one of three things that they do. They do it well. The quote for the franchise renewal negotiation, and also the audit, which is probably the most important part right now. As whenever this was done in 2011, there's a whole slew of new services that we can be capturing revenue from, and what they're going to do is as they go through the audit to make sure that we've gotten through this 10 years the money due to us, and then set it up as we go for the next 10 years so we get what is due to us in an era where cable companies are seeing diminished customers because of all the streaming services. So the quote for this is $15,750. This is going to be a 2 to 3 year process. It is actually budgeted in our consultant item. I did put money knowing that this would be coming up this year. So this would not be a 1 year expense. It would be over at least the next 2 budget years. But I'm going to put this on for consideration unless the board does not want it. But Dan Cohen does it. He does it well. It's sort of like going to a cardiologist over your general practitioner for this.
He does nothing but this. He's in every municipality that I'm involved in. And that's all he does is this cable work.
Any questions?
And
Yeah, so will we be looking at other companies besides Comcast?
we don't have that option. They have to come to us, and Verizon has said no, that the market, you're not going to see probably any more providers come in because the market's not there anymore to do the capital investment. I mean, I know residents have come in, residents have contacted them, but they have to be able to come in, put in their infrastructure, and then have a return on that investment. And in the cable market right now, it's not, they're losing customers. They're sort of like brick and mortar retail, where there's a lot more options out there and a lot cheaper. The last issue that I have to discuss here is another Cohen Law Group proposal, and they've kind of made another niche for themselves in the wireless facilities management ordinances. As you know, our wireless and cell tower ordinance is antiquated with keeping up with the DAS, with the new regulations that keep coming and changing almost on a monthly basis. So Mr. Blanco and I reached out to them, kind of talked to them, because they've been starting to do these ordinances now. So we have a proposal of it's a not to exceed proposal of $7,500 up to 30 hours of work to get our ordinance to where we can have what powers that are available to us to do design standards, architectural standards, aesthetic standards. We are both in recommendation that this would be something that we'd like to pursue because we can get this done, post haste, as Cohen does the cable franchise. That's what he kind of made his reputation on, and now they're in the telecommunications. It's kind of a dovetail from the cable industry.
Any questions on that?
Okay, that's what I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Blanco, plan and engineering topics.
I have 3 items for you tonight, 3 subdivision or site plans. The first one is the all-city subdivision. What happened? There we go. This is an empty lot or an empty parcel of ground that sits behind the Holiday Inn Express right next to the Turnpike interchange. And it's proposed to subdivide off that empty piece of ground from the parcel on which the Holiday Inn Express sits. I don't know what the plans are for development. My guess is there are plans because they seem to be very anxious to get this done, but I've not heard any inkling as to what those would be. But everything's in compliance. There's no issues with nonconformity. There is a gas line that runs through that lot, which they'll probably have to avoid, but they certainly are free to subdivide it off if they would like to. The only contingency on this is that because a new lot is being created, DEP requires there to be sewage planning in place. Because this is in the WWMA watershed, it will have to be a full planning module with the municipal resolution. We have not yet gotten the signed paperwork from the applicant, so I don't think we're going to have that in time for next week's meeting. That will probably get bumped to June. But Planning Commission recommends approval with that contingency. Next item is the Farina Pecora plan. And that is 2 residential lots that sit on Sandy Hill Road and Oakside Drive. The yellow lot is the proposed Pecora lot. The blue lot is the proposed Farina lot. Farinas would sell a portion of their ground to Pecora's. Pecora's would add that to their lot, so it's a boundary line adjustment. The unusual thing about this subdivision is that the right-of-way for Oakside Drive will extend right through the middle of the Pecora lot. There's nothing illegal about that. We have other places in the township where people own both sides of the road as one lot. It's unusual, but it's not unheard of, and it's certainly permissible. The Farina lot will still be at 41,000 plus or minus square feet, which is in compliance with the minimum 40,000 square foot lot size. The Pecora lot is not conforming now. It's much less than the 40,000 square foot, but it will increase to a little over 30,000 square feet. So it's still non-conforming, but it's non-conforming now. Planning Commission recommends approval of this as well. The next item is a cell tower. As I mentioned, that was discussed at the Planning Commission meeting, but we will take that up at the conditional use hearing next month. And the last application this month is for Sheets at Carpenter Lane. That's their store number 313. And as they did at the other two Sheets, they are looking to get an LCB tavern license, but that carries with it the requirement for a 30-seat dining area inside the store. So they would like to add on to the store with that shaded area towards the bottom of the screen. It would take up an area of what is now sidewalk and display area where they put ice and windshield washer solvent. In the summer they'll put firewood and that sort of thing out there for sale. So they will rearrange some of that. That's what the floor plan would look like with the inside seating. They feel they will still have adequate parking because they said the customers that may stay to eat would be the same customers that would come in to place an order and then sit down to eat it. So they do not feel there will be a parking problem. Planning Commission seemed like everything was in order with that. I will state that we had a letter of opposition from the school district. They were concerned about alcohol being sold so close to the school there at Stewartsville. There's really nothing in our ordinances that addresses that. So while the Planning Commission was sympathetic to that concern, they did not feel that that was a reason to deny or withhold approval of the proposed site plan. So I really think that's more an issue when it comes to transferring the LCB license into the township. There would have to be a hearing on that, at which time that could be an issue.
How close is the school?
100 yards.
It's catty corner.
100 yards.
100 yards, 300 feet.
It's probably a little bit more than that.
Yeah. Property line to property line.
Yeah, I had reached out to Dr. Kerr yesterday when I received the letter, and more or less his concern was not necessarily that he had any data or statistics to suggest that it's unsafe. More or less, the Norton School District was taking a positive approach towards the use of alcohol for minors in proximity. So I asked and invited all of the board members to attend today. Some said that were unable to attend. They may show up next week, but more or less their objection was simply to provide a alcohol-free lifestyle for the kids. Not that there was any safety or danger to any students within the buildings.
One of my concerns is that this sheet's located not only by the school, it's located by two housing plants where there's a lot of kids that walk up to that store and spend time up there. There's Penn's Woods, there's a whole area there, Overhold Acres, and I'll tell you, I'm not going to be a proponent of giving them any type of license if I don't have to. I don't see a reason for them to have it right in that location. There's plenty other places that people can go drink their beer, and I'm not objecting to drinking a beer, but I just don't see any need for it right there in that store. That store is almost, even though it is a gas station, it's almost like the area's little grocery store. You know, there's nothing else in that area, and a lot of parents send their kids up there for, you know, to pick up buttons or just minor groceries.
So next week is only the rearranging of the store. It's not the liquor license transfer.
That's correct.
But
And-
this is opening the door for them to be able to apply for that liquor license without the seating.
Correct. They
get the
can't
liquor
even
license.
get to first base without the seating.
But the seating complies with our ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. I mean,
Now, they are asking for,
I'm not suggesting that the two are related at all. I'm not putting them together. But what I know is that that plan probably meets all of our ordinances, and if they want to serve food in there, it's fine. The matter of the liquor license, well, Dwayne's right. I mean, there's a linkage there
Different
perceptually.
issues.
From a legal standpoint, they're not asking for that next week.
two different issues.
Okay, but that, it doesn't meet our ordinance because they asked for 3 waivers, and of course, the
Oh, they
planning
did.
commission
And
gave
I
them.
wanted to add that this
Okay.
photo that's on the screen is probably the best shot to show where this addition would go. In essence, that open plaza from the red column over to the left is what would be filled in. They would be left with a 4-foot, 2-inch wide sidewalk behind the pipe bollards rather than the minimum 5-foot sidewalk that we require. Now, their argument is that by putting in those pipe bollards, a car cannot pull far enough ahead to extend over the sidewalk. You need a 4-foot sidewalk for ADA requirements, so they're saying, we've got that. Because of the pipe bollards, let us get away with a 4-foot, 2-inch sidewalk rather than a 5-foot. They're also asking for a waiver of perimeter landscaping around the building. Obviously, you can't plant anything that will grow underneath that canopy because it won't get sunlight and water. Planning Commission was in agreement with that. And finally, they asked for a waiver on the parking being closer than 10 feet to the side of the building. That goes hand in hand with the sidewalk. What you're looking at right there is the existing sidewalk that's maybe 15 feet long, 12 feet long, that's 4 foot 2 inches wide. So that gives you a real good feel for what they would be left with once they build the addition. The Planning Commission was agreeable to that. They felt that you've already allowed that to happen with the original store. It would just extend that nonconformity for a little more distance.
Well, the problem with the sidewalks being not 5 feet is people probably have a tendency to walk behind the cars when they see a sidewalk that doesn't seem wide enough. I mean, a half a foot doesn't really make all that much difference to a person walking. However, if you have a walker or a cane or some other means of getting around, I think that, you know, you look at that and you go, oh, that's a little narrow. I just don't think it's safe to walk behind cars, parked cars. I always look for backup lights when I'm traveling around. It's a good indication that someone's going to be backing out. But I mean, I don't have a problem with 4.5 feet. I'm just saying that people do have a tendency to maybe avoid those. I have a mother-in-law with a walker, and I think that she would probably say, that's a little bit skinny for me, maybe I'll go around the back of the cars. But, I mean, if it meets the ordinance, that's okay. People will accommodate, I guess.
Well, our ordinance requires a 5-foot sidewalk in commercial projects, commercial districts, and a 4-foot sidewalk in residential. So I think a 4-foot is adequate. I think a 5-foot's better.
Yeah.
But I think Sheets' argument was, you've already let us do 4 foot 2 inches on part of the site. We just want to extend that for the length of the addition.
And that's probably going to be their argument with their liquor license as well. I just don't see a need for them to have a liquor license at this location when they already have 2 Sheets stores, probably not more than 2.5 miles up the road, that already are serving beer and wine.
I think, Fran, we have to separate the, I think in our heads, we know that their intentions are the liquor license, but right now we have to just treat this as a proposed addition. So we all know that they're pushing for the beer sales, but we can't really make that decision based off of what they're asking for here.
But in respect to what the school board had sent us, you know, they said, you know, the age of the students, attending that school, and granted, they are youngsters. I'm not worried about the age of the students at the school building. I'm worried about the people who are at the sheath store purchasing alcoholic beverages.
But again, I think right now we just have to look at, we're not looking at the LCB's policy, we're just looking at, are we okay with the sidewalks, the landscaping, and what's the other one, Andy? The
The parking closer than 10 feet to the
10
building.
feet. Now, Andy, did they propose any alternative plans if we deny this, or is there anywhere else that they can construct?
They did not.
Okay.
I have one thing on the alcohol, and I don't have a problem with them getting that. Keep in mind, right next door used to be two places. One used to be Charlie J's and the Tomato Patch that actually served alcohol. So not too much difference as far as I'm concerned. Just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, the only thing, Tony, kids didn't go into Charlie J's to buy bread
No,
and
they didn't.
milk.
They're not gonna go in and buy alcohol either, so I'm just saying.
And that's what I mean. I'm not worried about the kids purchasing the alcohol. I'm worried about the adults purchasing the alcohol and getting in their vehicles and driving around.
I just think, again, on this issue, we have to leave out the alcohol and just look at, are we going to approve the exemptions that they're looking for? I think the alcohol discussion is for another day.
All right, any other board discussion? Andy, you have something else?
Zach, I just have one more item.
Yep.
It's not really a application per se, but WWMA, as you know, has done a lot of upgrade work at their plant, and they've been replacing their interceptor lines going up Brush Creek. They are about to start phase 3 of their project, which is replacing their interceptor up into Manoraboro and going up Paintertown Road. Their solicitor has advised them that they need to get a letter from our planning commission approving their project based on section 303 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, which states that any proposed action of the governing body, its departments, agencies, and appointed authorities, which would be WWMA, shall be submitted to the planning agencies for its recommendations when the proposed action relates to the construction, extension, or abandonment of any water line, sewer line, or sewage treatment facility. I see this as a replacement project rather than a construction project, but I think in an abundance of caution, they just want to make sure that all of the member municipalities of WWMA are okay with it. So I don't think it has to go through the Board of Commissioners. They're asking for a letter from the Planning Commission. A very similar letter was sent back in 2016 for phase 1 of the project. So Bruce, I don't know what your thoughts are, if that has to come back for a vote next week, or if that can just go right from the Planning Commission, which is.
It goes right from the planning commission.
Okay. That was what we did before, but I certainly wanted you to be aware of it, just because of the size of the project. And that's all I have.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Blanco? Thank you.
Thank you.
Not seeing any old business on the agenda for tonight. Any further board comments? Just need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor by saying an aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Meeting adjourned at 7:50.